How I Learn English in a Funny Way. Episode 1, The English Challenge begins. Chapter 1, A Wedding Mockery. Sidra was at her cousin's wedding, enjoying the food and music, when her cousin Sana started teasing her. Sana said, "Sidra, you don't even know how to say I am happy properly in English." Everyone around laughed, and Sidra's cheeks turned red with embarrassment. She mumbled, "I am very, very happy," but it only made them laugh harder. That night, Sidra sat in her room, determined. "I'll show them. I'll become the best English speaker in the family," she thought. The next day, she marched to the bookstore to buy an English book. When Sidra reached the bookstore, she was overwhelmed by the rows of grammar books. "Which one should I buy?" she muttered to herself. She randomly picked a colorful book titled Grammar Made Easy. But as she got home and opened it, she realized it was meant for kids aged 5 to 7. The book was filled with cartoons and simple words like cat, dog, and apple. Sidra groaned, "Great! Now even the books are making fun of me." Chapter 2, A Parrot Learns English. Sidra decided to start practicing with whatever she had. She opened her book and started reading out loud, "I eat. You eat. We eat." Her parrot, Coco, perched nearby, squawked, "Eat now." Sidra looked at Coco and laughed, "At least someone understands English here." Inspired, she decided to teach Coco how to speak English. She pointed to an apple and said, "This is an apple." Coco tilted his head and replied, "Apple now." Sidra laughed so hard that she almost fell off her chair. Feeling motivated, Sidra continued her lessons. She tried explaining present simple tense to Coco by saying, "I eat apples. You eat apples. Coco eats apples." But every time, Coco interrupted with "eat now." Sidra realized that teaching her parrot wasn't going to help her much. Her younger brother Saad overheard her and teased, "You're worse than the parrot." Sidra threw a pillow at him and shouted, "Just wait. I'll be better than you in no time." Chapter 3, Sticky Notes Disaster. The next morning, Sidra had a brilliant idea. She would stick English words on every object in the house to learn vocabulary. She labeled the fridge, the table, the chair, and even her mom's favorite teapot. Feeling proud, she said to herself, "Now I'll remember every word." However, when her mom came into the kitchen and saw her teapot labeled as cup, she gasped, "Sidra, what have you done to my kitchen?" Sidra laughed nervously and said, "Mom, I'm just learning." Her dad joined in, looking at the notes, and said, "Why is the lamp labeled as lamb? Are you studying English or animals?" Sidra realized she had made several spelling mistakes. Instead of feeling discouraged, she laughed along and promised to fix it. Her dad jokingly added, "I'm waiting for you to label the cat as a dog next." Chapter 4, Cooking Videos Gone Wrong. Sidra decided to switch to YouTube for help. She searched for Learn English, but accidentally clicked on a cooking video instead. The chef was teaching how to make spaghetti and kept saying phrases like "chop the onions" and "boil the water." Sidra thought, this doesn't sound like grammar, but it's in English, so I'll learn it anyway. The next day, Sidra tried to practice her new phrases at school. When her teacher asked her to introduce herself, Sidra confidently said, "I chop onions, and I boil water." The entire class burst into laughter, and the teacher said, "Sidra, are you practicing cooking or English?" Embarrassed, Sidra decided to be more careful with her YouTube searches. Chapter 5, The Neighbor's Confusion. While Sidra was practicing in her backyard, her neighbor Mrs. Fatima overheard her. "Sidra, are you learning English?" she asked curiously. Sidra nodded and explained her struggles. Mrs. Fatima smiled and said, "Let me help you. I know some English too." Excited, Sidra started practicing with her neighbor. But soon, Sidra realized that Mrs. Fatima's English wasn't perfect either. For example, when Sidra said, "I am eating," Mrs. Fatima corrected her, saying, "No, no. You should say, I eat now." Sidra got even more confused. After an hour, Sidra smiled politely and said, "Thank you, Auntie, but I think I'll stick to my grammar book for now." She went back to her room and wrote in her diary, Rule number 1, only learn from experts. Episode 2, Present Tense Adventures. Chapter 1, Present Simple Mishaps. Sidra sat down with her book, determined to master present simple tense. She repeated aloud, I eat. You eat. He eats. She eats. Feeling confident, she decided to try it in front of her family at dinner. As everyone sat eating biryani, Sidra announced, I eat biryani. You eat biryani. We eats biryani. Her dad raised an eyebrow. We eats biryani? Sidra froze. Oh no, I added an S where it doesn't belong, she muttered. Her brother Saad teased, you should eat grammar instead of biryani. Sidra laughed and said, fine, but next time, I'll be perfect. Chapter 2, Present Continuous Confusion. The next day, Sidra moved on to present continuous tense. I am eating. You are eating. They are eating, she repeated to herself. To practice, she tried narrating everything her family was doing. She pointed to her dad and said, you are drinking tea. Her dad smiled and nodded. She pointed to her mom and said, you are cooking food. Her mom smiled and said, good job, Sidra. But then she pointed to her brother, who was sitting on the couch playing games, and said, you are sleeping. Saad looked up, confused, I'm sleeping? Do I look like I'm sleeping? Sidra laughed and said, oops, I mean playing. Saad smirked and said, good try, but you're not ready to teach me yet. Chapter 3, The Present Perfect Problem. Feeling bold, Sidra decided to tackle present perfect tense. She practiced saying, I have eaten. You have eaten. We have eaten. But when her aunt visited, Sidra decided to show off her skills. Her aunt asked, Sidra, did you eat lunch? Sidra replied, I have eat. Her aunt blinked in confusion and said, you have what? Sidra quickly corrected herself, I have eaten. Sorry. Her aunt laughed and said, well, I have laughed. Sidra smiled but felt determined to get better. She wrote in her diary, Rule number 2, always double-check before speaking. Chapter 4, A Present Perfect Continuous Drama. Sidra then learned about present perfect continuous. I have been studying. She has been studying. We have been studying, she said to herself. But when her mom asked her to clean her room, Sidra tried to sound smart and said, I have been cleaning my room. Her mom walked into the room and raised an eyebrow. Really? It doesn't look like it. Sidra looked around at the mess and laughed nervously. Okay, I will clean it now. Her mom shook her head and said, your grammar might improve, but your habits need work too. Chapter 5, Present Tense Mastery. After days of practice, Sidra decided to test herself with her teacher at school. When the teacher asked her, what do you do in your free time? Sidra confidently replied, I practice English every day. The teacher smiled and said, very good, Sidra. And what are you doing right now? Sidra replied, I am answering your question in perfect English. The whole class clapped. Feeling proud, Sidra realized she had finally mastered the present tense. She celebrated with her family that evening, declaring, I have been learning, and I will keep learning. Her dad joked, good. Maybe soon you'll teach us too. Episode 3, Past Tense Adventures. Chapter 1, The Past Simple Slip-Up. Sidra's next mission was to conquer the past simple tense. She practiced sentences like, I played. She danced. They watched. Confident, she decided to test herself with her mom. Mom, yesterday, I cooked lunch, Sidra said proudly. Her mom turned and stared at her. You cooked? Are you sure? Because I cooked lunch yesterday? Sidra paused and nervously said, okay, maybe I helped. But I cooked in my dreams. Her mom laughed and said, well, at least your grammar is cooking. Sidra added in her diary, Rule number 3, don't claim false victories when practicing tenses. Chapter 2, Past Continuous Comedy. Sidra moved on to past continuous. She learned to say, I was eating. You were reading. They were sleeping. She practiced in front of the mirror, I was studying all evening. At dinner, she told her dad, last night, I was reading my English book. Her dad asked, really? Then who was laughing loudly while watching a comedy show? Sidra giggled, I was reading, and laughing at the same time. Her dad shook his head. If you were studying like this, I hope your English doesn't laugh at you. Sidra grinned, realizing that tense practice also needed honesty. Chapter 3, The Past Perfect Mix-Up. Sidra struggled a bit with past perfect. I had eaten before she arrived, she repeated. But when she tried using it in real conversation, things got messy. During recess, her friend Sana asked, did you do your homework? Sidra confidently replied, I had did my homework before you asked. Sana burst into laughter, Sidra, it's not had did, it's had done. Sidra slapped her forehead and muttered, why is English so tricky? But Sana smiled and said, don't worry, you're learning fast. Chapter 4, Past Perfect Continuous Adventures. Sidra braved the past perfect continuous tense next. I had been studying for hours, she practiced. But when her teacher asked her to use it in a sentence, she panicked. She stood up and said, I had been them, sleeping for hours. The class erupted into laughter, and her teacher smiled. Sidra, try another example, the teacher said gently. Sidra laughed nervously and replied, I had been practicing English, but now I am practicing embarrassment. Later, Sidra reminded herself in her diary, rule number 4, practice tenses calmly before showing off. Chapter 5, The Past Tense Mastery Moment. After weeks of practicing, Sidra decided to narrate a story in past tense during her family tea time. She said, yesterday, I watched a video about tenses. While I was watching, I realized I had been making mistakes. But after that, I practiced until I understood. Her dad clapped and said, that was impressive, Sidra. You're getting better every day. Even Saad said, wow, maybe I should start learning from you. Sidra smiled proudly and thought, if I can handle the past, I'm ready for the future. Episode 4, Future Tense Adventures. Chapter 1, Sidra's New Year Resolution. It was New Year's Eve, and Sidra's family was discussing their resolutions for the year. When it was her turn, Sidra proudly announced, I will learn English perfectly this year. Her brother Saad smirked and said, we will see if that happens. Sidra ignored him and added, I will practice every day, and I will not give up. Her mom encouraged her, saying, if you keep this determination, you will succeed. Sidra felt motivated and whispered to herself, the future is mine. Chapter 2, The Confusion. Sidra started learning future simple tense. She repeated to herself, I will study. You will play. They will travel. Feeling confident, she decided to teach Saad. Saad, say, I will win the game, Sidra instructed. But Saad teased her by saying, I will not listen to you. Sidra rolled her eyes and said, fine, I will teach myself, and you will regret it when I'm fluent. Saad laughed, we will see about that. Sidra wrote in her diary, rule number 5, ignore the haters and focus on your goals. Chapter 3, Planning with Going to. Next, Sidra learned how to use going to for plans. She practiced by saying, I am going to study. We are going to travel. She is going to cook. At dinner, she told her family, I am going to watch an English movie tomorrow. Her dad said, good idea. What are you going to watch? Sidra paused and replied, I don't know, maybe an action movie? Saad laughed and said, make sure you're going to understand it. Determined, Sidra replied, don't worry, Saad. I am going to surprise everyone with my skills soon. Chapter 4, Future Perfect Confusion. Sidra tried mastering future perfect tense next. She repeated examples like, I will have finished my homework by 8 p.m. But when she tried using it in a conversation, things got tricky. Her teacher asked, Sidra, will you finish your assignment by tomorrow? Sidra confidently replied, yes, I will have finished it. The class laughed, and her teacher corrected her, "It will have finished." Sidra smiled nervously and said, "By next week, I will have mastered this tense perfectly." Her teacher laughed and said, "That's the spirit." Chapter 5, The Future is Bright. After weeks of practice, Sidra decided to test herself. She wrote down all her future plans. 1. I will study every day. 2. I am going to watch English movies. 3. By the end of the year, I will have improved my speaking skills. She shared her plans with her family, who cheered her on. Her dad said, "If you keep this up, you will become the best English speaker in the family." Even Saad admitted, "Okay, Sidra, I will not tease you anymore. You're doing great." Sidra smiled and thought, the future is bright, and so is my English. Episode 5, The Grammar Adventure begins. Chapter 1, Articles Attack. Sidra's next challenge was learning articles a and the. She repeated the rules, user before consonant sounds, and before vowel sounds, and the for specific things. At breakfast, she tried using articles while talking to her mom. "Mom, I saw a cat yesterday." The cat was sitting under an umbrella. Her mom smiled and said, "Good job." "But why was the cat under an umbrella?" Sidra laughed, "Because it was raining in my imagination." Her mom replied, "Well, your imagination and grammar are improving together." Chapter 2, Preposition Puzzle. Prepositions were Sidra's next challenge. She practiced using in, on, under, and between. To test herself, she described her room. She said, "My books are on the table. My shoes are under the bed. And my bag is in the cupboard." Saad walked in and added, "And your socks are between the chairs." Sidra glared at him. "Okay, maybe I need to clean my room, but at least my prepositions are correct." Her mom laughed. "You're improving day by day, Sidra. Keep going." Chapter 3, Adjective Adventures. Sidra then learned how to describe things with adjectives. She practiced saying, "the big dog," "the red apple," "the beautiful dress." Feeling confident, she decided to use adjectives while shopping with her mom. She pointed at a dress and said, "Mom, this is a very pretty dress." Her mom replied, "Yes, but it's also very expensive." Sidra laughed. "Okay, let's look for a cheaper dress." Her mom smiled and said, "Your grammar is beautiful, Sidra. Let's find you something beautiful to wear too." Chapter 4, Conjunction Chaos. Conjunctions, and, but, or, because, were Sidra's next topic. She practiced combining sentences like, "I like tea and coffee." "I like pizza, but I don't like burgers." At dinner, she told her family, "I will practice English every day because I want to improve. I will watch movies and read books. I will not give up but work harder." Her dad smiled and said, "You're connecting words and ideas perfectly." Even Saad admitted, "Your grammar is better than mine now." Chapter 5, The Grammar Test. After weeks of studying, Sidra's teacher announced a grammar test. Sidra was nervous but confident. During the test, she carefully used articles, prepositions, adjectives, and conjunctions. When the results came in, Sidra was overjoyed to see she had scored the highest marks. Her teacher praised her, "Sidra, your hard work is paying off. Keep it up." At home, Sidra celebrated with her family. "I knew I could do it," she said. Her mom replied, "You're not just learning English, you're mastering it." Sidra smiled and thought, "This is just the beginning of my grammar adventure." Episode 6, Vocabulary Victories. Chapter 1, The Power of Synonyms. Sidra decided to expand her vocabulary by learning synonyms, words with similar meanings. She practiced replacing common words with their synonyms. Happy becomes joyful. Big becomes enormous. Small becomes tiny. At lunch, she told her mom, "This biryani is not just tasty, it's delicious." Her mom smiled and said, "That's a great synonym." Saad chimed in, "And your English is not just good, it's impressive." Sidra grinned and wrote in her diary, Rule number 6, using synonyms makes me sound smarter. Chapter 2, Antonyms Adventures. Next, Sidra tackled antonyms, words with opposite meanings. She practiced saying, hot and cold, tall and short, fast and slow. During a family walk, Saad challenged her. Sidra, what's the opposite of strong? Sidra confidently replied, weak. Saad asked, and the opposite of beautiful? Sidra smirked and said, you. The whole family burst into laughter, and her dad said, Sidra, your English is strong, and so is your humor. Chapter 3, Idiom Fun. Sidra discovered idioms and found them fascinating. She learned phrases like it's raining cats and dogs, meaning heavy rain, and break a leg, meaning good luck. One rainy evening, she told her mom, look outside, Mom. It's raining cats and dogs. Her mom chuckled, well, I hope no cats or dogs come into the house. Sidra replied, don't worry. I'll just say, break a leg, if they do. Her mom laughed and said, Sidra, your English is becoming more colorful every day. Chapter 4, Word of the Day. Sidra started a Word of the Day challenge. Each day, she learned one new word and tried using it in sentences. One day, her word was adventurous. She told Saad, I feel adventurous today. Saad teased, are you going to climb a mountain? Sidra replied, no, but I'm going to explore new English books. Her dad said, that's a great adventure, Sidra. Keep exploring. Sidra realized that learning one word at a time was an exciting journey. Chapter 5, Vocabulary Victory Party. After weeks of learning new words, Sidra decided to show off her skills at a family dinner. She used synonyms, antonyms, and idioms in her conversation. This food is amazing, not just tasty, she began. It's a feast fit for a king. And after dinner, I'll break a leg by practicing my English. Her family applauded her efforts. Saad said, Sidra, your vocabulary is unstoppable. Her mom added, your hard work is inspiring, Sidra. Sidra smiled and thought, my vocabulary journey isn't over yet, but I've already won. Episode 7, Pronunciation Challenges. Chapter 1, Tongue Twister Trials. Sidra's teacher introduced tongue twisters to help with pronunciation. Sidra practiced saying, she sells seashells by the seashore and Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. At home, she tried it in front of her family. She sells seashells by the sea-saw. Everyone burst into laughter. Saad teased, Sidra, are you selling seashells or tongue twisters? Sidra grinned, I may stumble today, but tomorrow I'll master it. Her dad encouraged her, keep practicing, Sidra. You're already improving. Chapter 2, Vowel Victory. Sidra realized that vowels were tricky in English. She practiced words like cat and cut, bed and bad, ship and sheep. At breakfast, she told her mom, I will eat bread not Brad. Her mom laughed, good. I didn't cook Brad for breakfast. Sidra then practiced with Saad. Say ship, not sheep, she instructed. Saad tried and said, sheep. Sidra sighed, well, I guess I'm still better than you. Chapter 3, Silent Letters Surprise. Sidra discovered silent letters and how tricky they were. K is silent in knife. B is silent in comb. P is silent in psychology. She told her dad, Dad, English is so funny. Why write letters if we don't pronounce them? Her dad replied, that's just how English is, full of surprises. Sidra laughed, well, I will master these silent letters, even if they stay silent. Chapter 4, Stress and Intonation Struggles. Sidra learned that stress and intonation could change meanings. She practiced saying, I didn't say he stole the money, emphasizing he, versus I didn't say he stole the money, emphasizing stole. She tested her family. What does this sentence mean? She asked, stressing different words. Her mom smiled, Sidra, you're sounding like a professional speaker already. Even Saad admitted, you're better at this than I am. Sidra replied, see? Hard work pays off. Chapter 5, The Pronunciation Champion. Sidra entered a pronunciation competition at school. The challenge was to say difficult words like phenomenon, enthusiasm, and squirrel. When it was Sidra's turn, she took a deep breath and confidently said each word. Her classmates cheered, and the teacher announced, "Sidra is the winner." At home, her family celebrated her victory. Her dad said, "You've come so far, Sidra." Saad added, Okay, you're the pronunciation queen." Sidra smiled and thought, with every step, my English is becoming unstoppable. Episode 8, Writing Wonders. Chapter 1, Sentence Building Basics. Sidra's teacher introduced writing skills, starting with simple sentences. She explained, every sentence needs a subject, verb, and object. For example, I eat an apple. Sidra practiced writing, I read a book. Saad plays football. Mom cooks delicious food. At home, she showed her sentences to her family. Her mom said, "You're getting better every day, Sidra." Saad joked, "Just don't write a book about how annoying I am." Sidra smirked, "Don't worry, that's for my second book." Chapter 2, Creative Stories. Sidra learned to write short stories. Her first story was about a cat and a mouse becoming friends. She wrote, "The cat did not eat the mouse. They shared food and became best friends." She read it aloud to her mom, who said, "What a lovely story, Sidra." Saad teased, "Next time, write about a clever boy named Saad." Sidra replied, "Or maybe about a sister who always wins." Her dad smiled and said, "Sidra, your imagination is shining through your writing." Chapter 3, The Journal Joy. Sidra started keeping a daily journal. She wrote about her day, her feelings, and her English journey. One entry said, "Today, I learned new words and wrote a story. I feel proud of my progress." Her mom encouraged her, "Writing every day will make you a great writer, Sidra." Saad peeked at her journal and said, "Don't write about me." Sidra laughed, "Too late." Writing became Sidra's favorite activity. She realized it helped her think clearly and express herself better. Chapter 4, Grammar in Action. Sidra practiced using proper grammar in her writing. She focused on punctuation, capital letters, and sentence structure. She wrote, "My name is Sidra. I love learning English. Every day, I practice reading, writing, and speaking." Her teacher checked her work and said, "Well done, Sidra. Your sentences are clear and correct." At home, her dad said, "Your writing is becoming as good as your speaking." Sidra felt proud and motivated to keep improving. Chapter 5, The Writing Contest. Sidra entered a school writing contest. The topic was My Dream. Sidra wrote about her dream of becoming fluent in English and helping others learn too. She wrote, "I want to travel the world, share stories, and teach English to those who struggle like I did." Her teacher praised her essay, saying, "Your writing is inspiring, Sidra." When she won first prize, her family celebrated. Her mom said, "Sidra, you've turned your dreams into reality." Sidra smiled and thought, "Writing has unlocked a whole new world for me." Episode 9, Speaking Confidence. Chapter 1, The First Conversation. Sidra was nervous about speaking English, so her teacher encouraged her to have simple conversations with friends. She decided to try it with Saad. "Hi, Saad. How are you today?" Sidra asked. "I'm good, thanks. How about you?" Saad replied. Sidra smiled, "I'm happy because I practiced English today." Saad laughed, "You're doing great, Sidra." Sidra felt proud of her first English conversation and thought, "If I can do this, I can speak more." Chapter 2, Public Speaking Challenge. Sidra's teacher gave her class a challenge to speak in front of everyone. Sidra was terrified but decided to give it a try. She practiced in front of her mirror, repeating, "I am Sidra, and I love learning English." When it was her turn, she stood confidently and said, "Hello, my name is Sidra. I am here to share how learning English makes me feel happy." Her classmates clapped, and her teacher said, "Great job, Sidra. Your confidence is growing." Sidra smiled and realized, speaking out loud helps me feel stronger. Chapter 3, The Storytelling Session. Sidra joined a storytelling club at school. The first task was to tell a short story in English. Sidra nervously stood up and started with, "Once upon a time, there was a bird who loved to sing." She described how the bird faced challenges but kept singing. By the end, her classmates were listening intently. The bird found a friend, and they sang together happily. Sidra finished. Her friends cheered, and her teacher said, "Sidra, you've become a confident storyteller." Sidra was thrilled. Storytelling in English makes me feel so free. Chapter 4, The English Debate. Sidra's class organized a friendly debate in English. Sidra was assigned the topic of why learning English is important. She prepared her points. English helps us connect with people worldwide. It opens doors to new knowledge and opportunities. When it was her turn, she spoke clearly and confidently. Learning English allows us to communicate and understand each other. It's the key to a brighter future. Her teacher said, "Excellent points, Sidra. You've convinced everyone with your clear and powerful words." Sidra thought, "Speaking in front of others feels amazing when I'm prepared." Chapter 5, The Confidence Boost. Sidra's teacher told the class to speak for 5 minutes about their favorite hobby in English. Sidra chose reading. She said, "My favorite hobby is reading books in English. It helps me learn new words and ideas. I love stories, and reading takes me to new worlds." Her classmates applauded, and Sidra's teacher said, "Your passion for reading and speaking is inspiring, Sidra." Sidra realized, speaking confidently about things I love makes it so much easier. Episode 10, Mastering English. Chapter 1, The Goal Setters. Sidra sat with her teacher to discuss her progress. "Sidra, you've improved so much in a short time. Now, it's time to set new goals," her teacher said. Sidra smiled and said, "I want to speak English fluently, write amazing stories, and understand movies and songs in English." Her teacher nodded. "That's a great goal, Sidra. Keep practicing, and you'll get there." Sidra thought, "With goals like these, nothing can stop me." Chapter 2, The Reading Marathon. Sidra set herself a challenge to read one English book every week. She started with simple stories, but soon, she was devouring longer books. One afternoon, Sidra finished her first novel in English. She closed the book and said, "I did it. I understood everything, and it was so exciting." Her mom, who had been watching, said, "Sidra, you're becoming an expert in English." Sidra smiled and felt proud, thinking, "This is just the beginning of my journey." Chapter 3, Writing Without Limits. Sidra decided to write a short story in English. She created a tale about a girl who traveled to a magical world and solved mysteries with her friends. She wrote, "The sun was setting as she stepped into the forest, where strange creatures lived." But she wasn't scared. She was ready for the adventure. After finishing, Sidra showed her story to her teacher. "This is excellent, Sidra. You've captured the reader's attention," her teacher praised. Sidra beamed, thinking, writing in English feels so natural now. Chapter 4, English Everywhere. Sidra realized that English was all around her. She started listening to English songs, watching movies without subtitles, and following social media accounts in English. One day, Sidra watched an English movie without pausing to look up words. She understood everything. Her dad asked, "How did the movie go?" Sidra replied, "I understood every word. This English journey is making my life more exciting." Chapter 5, The Fluent Speaker. Sidra's final goal was to speak English fluently with anyone. One day, she had the chance to speak to a tourist who didn't speak her language. Sidra didn't hesitate. "Hello. How can I help you?" she asked. The tourist smiled, "Can you guide me to the nearest park?" Sidra gave clear directions and even gave extra tips about nearby attractions. The tourist thanked her, and Sidra felt amazing. "I did it. I can speak English like a native, she thought. Her mom hugged her and said, "You've mastered it, Sidra. All your hard work paid off." Sidra smiled and whispered, "English is no longer a challenge. It's part of me now."